is an ABC News special. The Royal Wedding. Prince Charles and Lady Diana. A preview. Reporting from London, Barbara Walters and Peter Jennings.
Good evening and welcome to London's most famous park, Hyde Park. Barbara Walters and I are sitting on the Cavalry Parade Ground here with about 500,000 other people to celebrate the eve of the royal wedding. 500,000 other people, plus choirs from Wales and from the Welsh Guards Division, the mass bands of the Household Division, and the most extraordinary fireworks display seen in this country since 1749, and this will be a recreation. Barbara, they said that there'd be no lost children. We've seen a few here already this evening.
Well, I can't blame children for coming here and even wanting to see more. This is billed as a grand concert and fireworks display, and what you're seeing now are the Queen's invited guests. They've come from a dinner nearby at Buckingham Palace. They include royalty, heads of state. Nancy Reagan will be here, Prime Minister Thatcher will be here, and all of the Queen's immediate family, including the bridegroom, the Prince of Wales.
And to offer perhaps our first historical piece of information, we're in Hyde Park, of course, and it's named after Anne Hyde, who was the last English woman to marry a Prince of Wales, and that was 300 years ago. And, of course, we are here to celebrate the marriage of Lady Diana Spencer to this Prince of Wales.
This Princess of Wales, this next Princess of Wales, however, will not be here tonight because she's home tucked in bed. That's where she said she was going to be watching this on television because tomorrow's a big day.
And we can get just an absolutely extraordinary picture now from the Goodyear blimp high above the park. A policeman told us a while ago that if the people could stand in the man-made lake, which is just a few feet down from where we were sitting, they would do it. Prince Charles will, of course, be here. We're celebrating not only the eve of the wedding, but we're celebrating the International Year of the Disabled. And Prince Charles, of course, is the patron of that. Before the evening is over, that facade is going to be ablaze with something like, as I recall, about 2,000 pounds of fireworks. So the scene is set. Sorry, Barbara.
No, I was just going to say it's all a tribute to Prince Charles.
That's right, and we'll see much of his life's history throughout the evening. The scene is set then for the royal fireworks. We'll hear the official interview, which was conducted with Prince Charles and Lady Diana. We'll have all that when our exclusive coverage of this entire evening continues in just a minute.
With the bridegroom, Prince Charles, his son next to her, and the Duke of Edinburgh. And they're arriving now. Cheers of a throng of people. And the Queen has invited many of the most important guests tomorrow. These are torchlights held by scouts.
And so the royal family arrives here on the Cavalry Parade Ground at Hyde Park. First to emerge Prince Philip and then the Prince of Wales himself. And, of course, Her Majesty the Queen, 5 foot 2 inches tall, eyes of stunning blue, and looking extremely happy this evening, standing with her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, and being greeted by Major General Langley, the commander of the Household Division, Barbara, which is going to play an enormous role, of course, in this evening's performance.
And all of the Queen's family are here tonight, and when I say the Queen's family, that includes the reigning monarchs of Europe.
Princess Margaret and Princess Anne.
I think that's Princess
Anne's husband, Captain Mark Phillips, following her baby just christened yesterday. Her next child just christened yesterday during one of Lady Diana's wedding rehearsals at St. Paul's Cathedral.
They're all getting ready because shortly the Prince of Wales is going to light a series of beacons, and it's going to set off beacons that will go all over the country.
The royal family now, to great applause from those people who are in the immediate area of what we are calling the royal bleacher or the royal block, as they move along the red carpet. Most of the Queen's guests already now seated, as Barbara was saying, from much of the rest of the world and much of the rest of the Commonwealth. Prince Charles now goes over to accept the torch, to light the first of a series of bonfires all over Great Britain.
The torch is being presented to him by a young girl, Miss Carrie Greenshield. She's 18 years old, and she suffers from a spinal disorder. And she lives in a home for the disabled, which is sponsored by Queen Elizabeth's Foundation. That's the Olympic torch. It was used to light the Olympic Games in London in 1948 and Australia in 1956.
Prince Charles, of course, who is himself very dedicated to disabled people, and this being the International Year of the Disabled, he is the international patron. Well, let us hope it works. This particular beacon, which will be lit here or lighted here in the middle of the cavalry parade ground, will send a signal to an entire network of bonfires all over the British Isles to advise people of this celebration occurring for the royal wedding. This is an old 18th century beacon to which the flare is going. It didn't work last night in rehearsal. We wonder if it shall work now.
You know, they used to use the same kind of beacons all over the country during the time to warn people of the Spanish Armada. A lot of history tonight. Looks like it made it, Peter.
And there behind the beacon, of course, is the facade of the Royal Palace, which will be the scene for this fireworks and music display this evening. This beacon will now be seen by a man, we suspect perhaps watching television, high in the post office tower, one of the highest structures in London. He will then send the signal to the next beacon location at Althorp, the home of Lady Diana Spencer's parents, then to Windsor Castle, where the Queen has a residence, and then it shall be extended throughout the British Isles to Carnarvon in Wales, where Prince Charles was invested as the Prince of Wales, to Cardiff, the capital of Wales, and all the way up north into Scotland to Balmoral, one of the Queen's residences, and on out into the Shetland Islands and into the Hebrides. This is the same beacon, warning, or advisory that was used to announce the Queen's Jubilee in 1977.
By the way, the man responsible for the fireworks tonight, Major Parker, who did them this evening and did them also for the Queen's Jubilee, is an interior decorator when he's not setting off fireworks. Now the Queen takes her place amidst members of her family, other royalty, heads of state.
I must confess, Barbara, you're so much better at these things than I am, but I think Prince Charles looks rather relaxed, and I guess one of the reasons is because, unlike Lady Diana, he is just simply so accustomed to these public occasions. The guns of the King's Troop of the Royal Horse Artillery will fire a salute to Prince Charles. Take part in ceremonial occasions such as this. And as the guns of the King's troops end their first salute, for there shall be 21 guns before the nights are out, the mass bands of the Household Division begin to march on onto this cavalry parade ground here in Hyde Park in the center of London. We will be back in just a moment with our exclusive coverage of this whole evening. The music of the mass bands of the Household Division begin to march on in front of the royal facade. They come from 5 of the regiments of the Household Division. Only the Grenadier and the Coldstream Guards are missing tonight. These are the bands, Barbara, as you well know, of Her Majesty's own divisions, the elite ceremonial regiments of the British Army.
But they are also soldiers, and they are trained as medics. And if it were a time of war, these men would be helping the wounded in the field. All of the bands, all of the people, the soldiers who make up the bands, are trained as medics.
King George II, Barbara, who devised this great celebration back in 1749, would be very pleased, and George Frederick Handel would be terribly disappointed, because Handel, as you recall, wanted violins. George II wanted military music. Well, he didn't get it. Handel got all the violins. Tonight there are none, and there are 50 more brass instruments than there were in 1749.
Something like 350 musicians tonight.
Her Majesty the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Charles, offering their applause. And the beacon chain, I'm not sure whether or not you can hear the official announcer here this evening. If you can, we shall be quiet. If you cannot, he is saying at the moment that the chain of beacons, the people here in Hyde Park are able to follow on giant television screens, are already being lighted all the way across the country. And they are showing now, of course, Althorp in Northamptonshire, the home of Lady Diana Spencer's parents.
Viscount Althorp, the brother of the bride of Somerville,
Viscount Althorp, of course, who is the brother of Lady Diana Spencer, who is lighting the beacon at Althorp, which will be sighted by the next beacon and go all the way to the northern coast of Scotland and out into the Hebrides.
He is, by the way, the godson of Queen Elizabeth. Charles is the youngest member of the Spencer family.
One of the things, of course, that I'm quite sure you're now able to see on the faces of the royal family is an absolute passion for fireworks. And it's part of a long passion that the royal families of England have had, going all the way back to Queen Elizabeth I, when she, at her coronation, had fireworks, and even Anne Boleyn had her fireworks. Now the trumpeters from the household division look prepared to sound the trumpet.
very sad, very happy people. The Prince Charles and Diana, my sister.
Viscount Althorp, Viscount Spencer.
Offering the toast. He is 17, the same age as young Edward, Charles' brother.
Music for the Royal Fireworks begins with the trumpeters of the Household Division playing the fanfare and the minuet. Behind, heaven's sake, behind the facade of this palace, the fireworks begin. There in the very center of the facade itself, feathers of the Prince of Wales burning brightly, and beneath it the motto of the Noble Order of the Garter. On y soit qui mal y pense, he who thinks evil, evil to him who thinks evil. These are called set pieces, and Barbara, perhaps you can explain that they trace moments in Prince Charles' life.
And yes, Zinde, which means I serve, which is the motto of the Prince of Wales. These are different crests, they are different regiments that he is the head of. Some of them go back to the school days, representing the different schools and the universities that he went to. Prince Charles went to Cambridge. That's represented.
Quite extraordinarily, mixed with the noise of the fireworks as they shoot high into a beautiful London sky, a hushed expectancy among the crowd itself, waiting for what will be the next display. And these set pieces, as they're called, on the royal facade itself, light up. For example, one going up now showing the United World Colleges, of which Prince Charles is, of course, the patron and the president.
You are listening to the overture for music for the Royal Fireworks, which was composed by Handel for this original fireworks extravaganza.
And Handel, though German, of course, Barbara, became a British citizen when he was court composer to King George II. And there, of course, the parachute wings of Prince Charles. First member, of course, of the royal family not to enter the British military, but who have done so many things in this country, like, if not average British citizens, certainly the first child of a royal family to have been educated in such a full way outside the confines and the rather cloistered atmosphere of the royal palace.
Not only in England, but he went to Wales to study. He went to Australia to study. And this is really a fireworks biography. As he sits there, perhaps he can look back over highlights of his life leading up to tomorrow.
Her Majesty looking almost as rapidly through her program as we are. This is intended to represent a waterfall over the facade of the palace, which I must tell you in 1749 was an absolute disaster. It burned down, a couple of people were killed.
Someone fell out of a tree, someone drowned.
Once again, for those of you who are students of history, while there is no music to name for a moment, I think we should probably give some credit to the Payne's Fireworks Company. These are English fireworks. And for those of you who are students of English history, this is the same company which reportedly supplied the fireworks to Guy Fawkes when he tried to burn down Parliament, where King James was at the time in 1605. And of course, Guy Fawkes Day in Great Britain is roughly celebrated like our Halloween. London skies once again.
Don't want to interrupt the fireworks, but the last time he saw Lady Diana was at a large dinner that his mother gave, and today and tonight, by tradition, he will not see his bride.
But I would be willing to bet you, Barbara, that even though Lady Diana said she was going to have an early night, she's on a balcony over at Clarence House, not very far from here, less than a mile, perhaps standing on the balcony with the Queen Mother watching these very fireworks. I must tell you, by the way, that this takes us back a bit in history to 1749, because that is an 18th century fire engine being pulled by men who were not quite so alert in 1749 when the entire structure burned down, and they have simulated it this evening. They don't look in very good condition either, Barbara. They look about like me as they go to the right end of the facade to put out with what we believe will be a simulated fire.
What we hope will be a simulated fire.
Absolutely. All firemen. Yourself, and how they think it will affect both of their lives.
There's been a tremendous boost, and just a mass of smiling faces. It's wonderful.
Quite emotional, too.
Oh, very, very, yes.
Of course, thousands of people are joining in your wedding festivities in a very practical way, aren't they? I'm thinking of all the street parties and collections for charities and so on. Have you had to become very involved in that side of the festivities?
Not so personally involved, but I try to make sure I'm informed of what's going on. The difficulty is there is so much coming in terms of mail and presents and so on, that it's very hard to keep up, particularly when you try to dash about the country as well. But I mean, already this week alone, I think there have been 25,000 letters, and it's averaged 15,000 letters for the last 4 weeks. And I think roughly since we got engaged, there's been about 100,000 letters, which, I mean, I wanted to be able to take the opportunity to say how really, really grateful we are for such, I mean, incredible kindness. I can't get over it. And I think there have been, what now, something like over 3,000 presents. And I looked this morning, and there's a corridor stacked with, I don't know, 40 sacks full of presents and mail, which we can't get through. And, I mean, it's incredible.
You've obviously had a staggering amount of mail, and I'm sure you've been able to look at some of it yourselves. Is there anything that's particularly touched you?
Well, for me, all the things that come from children who've obviously spent hours of work on paintings, pictures, cards, anything like that, and things they've baked at home.
You had a very special collage from the children at the kindergarten.
Yes, I collected it last Friday when I went to the end-of-term party, which I ended up being battered and bruised. And there's so many children crawling on top of me. But they presented me with that and a glass representing young England. It was lovely, really nice.
Super. What does it actually show on the collage?
Well, it's the firework display that's going to happen on Tuesday. The one I'm not going to.
Why is that?
Because I'm going to be tucked out in bed, I think, early night.
Not allowed to see me anyway the night before.
Well, no.
We might
Even by
quarrel.
the light of an exploding firework.
By tradition, that's absolutely right.
Thank you.
Because the weddings obviously meant a great deal of planning and preparation, a lot of work, I imagine, behind the scenes. How much have you become involved in that personally?
Well, we both tried to be very much involved. I mean, the wedding presents, thanking them, or signing letters or something like that. But, I mean, there's so much coming in, it's very difficult to keep up with it all.
A lot of work going on here at the palace.
Oh, yes. And all these people who've organised the wedding at a larger scale than usual is tremendous, really is.
Of course, music is a special feature, sir, of the wedding service itself. Could you tell us something about your choice of music?
Well, the only thing is I've always longed to have a musical wedding. And one of the reasons, fortunately anyway, we both love St. Paul's, which was, thank goodness, a good start. But one of the reasons I particularly wanted to be married was because I think that, musically speaking, it is such a magnificent setting, and the whole acoustics is so spectacular, with a 10 or 11 second sort of after sound, after note. And so I've taken a lot of interest in that, and actually in the whole thing.
Pomp and circumstance will no doubt add to that. Was that your choice?
Oh, yes. But you see, I think the thing which is very important with a big cathedral and a long aisle, and you said it takes 3.5 minutes,
Something like that, yes.
I think, to walk up. You want something very stirring and dramatic and noisy to carry you up. Because if you go something like a choir, you start hearing your ankles cricking, you know what I mean? And it's much more difficult to walk without something very sort of stirring. So this is what we've tried to find, stirring things.
You're not worried about that 3.5 minute walk?
No, I go along with everybody else.
Did you choose any of the hymns yourself, any of the music?
The one hymn, I've actually in my country, which has always been my favourite since school days.
Do you have a favourite hymn or psalm?
Yes, well, the one I chose was Christ has made the sure foundation, which has got the most marvellous harmony. I find it very moving. So I shall, I think, spend half the time in tears.
Of course, people are seeing this very much as a state occasion, but weddings are always really personal, family things as well. Have you been able to put in any small personal touches that will still make it very much your day?
Have we been able to put in any small personal touches?
I think by inviting one's friends and all people who've helped us.
It must have been enormous fun, actually, putting together a guest list of people.
Well, I don't know. Because you have a certain amount. You have to sort of take a few people out or whatever. It's been quite difficult my side anyway.
But I very much wanted, from my point of view, to have as many people who I've known in the Navy and university and the Air Force and everybody I've been involved with for the last 20 years, literally, in school. All the marvelous people who looked after me at these different places. And to try and remember everybody has been an absolute nightmare, hasn't it? And suddenly, I mean, even now, I suddenly remember somebody that I tried hard to remember but didn't. And I hope we've got most people.
It is a nice way, isn't it, of seeing friends and saying thank you, really. What about the guests, apart from the guests, the presents, because you've drawn up this lovely list of presents. Did you get together in deciding what was going to go on that list?
Yeah, it was me. I had great fun going around. And my list's completely empty. It's all come to us. It's marvellous.
has.
Yes.
So I'm going to get stuck with 2 toasters or something
Well,
like
I don't know about that. We've got 2 houses to fill, so I've been busily writing thank you letters to various people.
One thing that I know St. Paul's have done to make it, from their point of view, very personal, they were telling me that where you're going to make your vows, they've made a platform so that at least you can feel that you're together and alone, because I think everyone would agree, when you make your vows, that's the most solemn, the most precious, and a very personal moment. Is it going to be that for you, even though you know the eyes of the world are watching you at that very important moment?
Well, I hope so, yes. I don't know about Diana, but I'm more used to it, I think, probably now, knowing for years that the camera's poking at you from every quarter and recording every twitch you make. So you can get used to a certain extent, and on those occasions you accept that that's part of it. And I think if you don't try to work out in your own mind some kind of method for existing and surviving this kind of thing, you would go mad, I think. And so in the end you do get used to it, but I don't know, do you find that after the last 6 months you're beginning to get used to it?
Just.
It is, I suppose, one of the most important things you're going to have to adjust to, really, isn't it?
Well, of course, yes.
And Prince Charles has been a great help to you in that
Well,
progression.
that is tower of strength.
Precious.
I have to say, like, you're sitting there.
With all these heavy responsibilities and these public duties that you're both going to have, you're going to have time for the private life, for making a home and running a home, sort of thing that young married couples do.
All along with the
Are
domestic
you looking forward
responsibilities.
to making a home at Highgrove, for example?
Oh, yes, very much so. Looking forward to being a good wife.
Are you a good cook, by the way?
I have done cooking course, yes. I don't think I'm average. But you haven't tasted anything, because I won't let you.
Yes, it is. But I think you're absolutely right. It is the most difficult thing, I think, is trying to work out how you can have a family life as well as all the public demands that there are. I tend to lead a sort of idiotic existence of trying to get involved in too many things and dashing about. And this is going to be my problem, is trying to sort of control myself and you know, work out something so that we can have a proper family life. It isn't easy. There's so much to be done, you know.
After Wednesday, you will have a wife by your side. That's obviously going to make an enormous difference to you.
But it's marvellous to have a lot of support.
Better like it.
So the royal couple to be married tomorrow. And in a moment we're going, and Nancy Reagan, who's been here for 6 days, she says this is the longest time that she has ever been separated from her husband in 29 years of marriage.
That's a long time. I must say I very much enjoyed being, as we would say in this country, your liege man tonight.
It's been a pleasure to work with you.
And I look forward to it tomorrow. As the massed bands of the Household Cavalry leave Hyde Park, we remind you that we will be back at 5 o'clock in the morning New York time for the departure from Buckingham Palace for the royal wedding in St. Paul's Cathedral itself. We will cover it all during an expanded version of Good Morning America with David Hartman and an assortment of guests who we hope that you will find interesting. There will be more about tonight, on Nightline tonight. Barbara and I have enjoyed ourselves immensely.
And tomorrow, probably you will never see a wedding like tomorrow again.
We hope you've enjoyed yourselves. We hope you'll join us tomorrow from Hyde Park in London. On behalf of Barbara Walters and everybody.